Ciao everybody, new video from Big Apple Pipes. Today I wanted to have a nice background behind me to do this introduction. But before we start, I just wanted to say two things. The first of all is a huge thank you. Super grateful to all of you that watched the Per Jensen chat, what was it, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, because the reactions to that video really blown me away. I was not expecting that video to be so successful. This is already a very small channel that was almost dead because of course it got no views, so I focused on my main Italian channel. I will leave the link on the description just in case you want to have a look. So I was really blown away by the reaction, so many comments. So thank you a lot. A lot of you shared the video across social medias and forum. So thank you a lot. Of course, that was not due to myself being particularly great. That was mostly due to the fact that, of course, Per is a great host, but great guest, but mostly due to the fact that we pipe smokers are all very concerned, very worried about the entire MacBaren Sutliff situation. And so any of us want to know a little bit more about what is happening. And today we are here to dig even deeper on this topic, and I think we will uncover many things. The second thing I wanted to say is that in case you want to subscribe to the channel, you are motivating me to start doing again videos in English as well. So in case you want to stay tuned and check the updates on this channel, just subscribe. I will also add, as I said, the link to my Italian channel in case you want to have a look, my email address in case you want to reach out if you have any questions, whatever you like, and fourth, the link to my merchandising e-commerce, pipe related merchandise e-commerce. They are all items that I designed, so just in case you want to support the channel, but just have a look because some objects are pretty cool, so you can just check it. It's no obligation, but in case you want, you'll find it in the description. Coming to us, as I was saying, today we're going to dig even deeper in the STG situation, STG MacBaren Sutliff, because we have as a guest Leonard Wortzel from STG. Leonard reached out to me after watching the Per Jensen interview, so I am grateful to him for this decision. And many of you maybe don't know him, but he has been the person in charge of making recommendations to STG regarding the MacBaren Sutliff portfolio. So he was tasked to review, analyze the portfolio, and recommend what to keep, what to discontinue, what to do with the Sutliff factory. So he is the one that he didn't make the decision, but he made the recommendations. Many of you already know he went recently on the Pipes Magazine forum. He tried to answer people, address people questions and worries, but all the threads were shut down because they got derailed by very frustrated users, which again I can understand in part, but we're also here to understand, so we can also catch the opportunity to ask questions instead of just go ahead and vent and insult and whatever it is. So he thought that a discussion could have been a better way of providing information and address questions and concerns. So I tried to gather all the questions that I could see across the forums and social media. So I did my best in asking him all the questions that we want answered. It's a very long, articulated discussion, so I'm sure none of you will watch it in one take, but I didn't want to split the video because we go always back and forth on things we say and we build on it. So I think that we uncover more and more things as we move forward with the conversation. So I leave it entirely to you to watch it in the most convenient way and manage your own time. We're all adults here. Just one suggestion, maybe get something to drink, something to eat, some snacks, and also something to smoke and enjoy the conversation. That's pretty much it. It's already a long interview. I don't want to add any more time to it. Just let me know what you think. Feel free to reach out, to email me, whatever you like. See you soon. Hello everybody, and hello Leonard. thank you very, very much for being here. Thank you for your availability of having this chat with me. I think it's very, how can I say, good from you to have this willingness to be out there trying to answer questions from the pipe community, and I'll get to there later on. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you personally for your availability and your time for being here and have this chat, which won't be short for sure.
No.
So first of all, I wanted to ask you something about yourself, because I mean now you are and allow me to joke, like the most hated guy in the pipe tobacco community. Because you put yourself as the person to vent on about the current situation with STG, MacBaren, Sutliff. You went on famously on the Pipes magazine forum to address questions of people, and there have been, like, I don't know, 3 different threads that derailed due to the frustration and anger, let's say, of many users that couldn't have a more civilized manner of discussing, let's say. So each thread got shut down. But I think here we can have the time and the space to have a nice question. So before that, maybe not many people knew who you are. So I think I wanted to start to ask you a little bit about yourself. So tell us about who is Leonard Wortzel, and what do you
Where do
do?
we? Well, I've been a pipe smoker since 1995.
Okay.
At the time, I was, what would I have been? About 23. Had just moved to Dallas and decided I needed a new habit or hobby.
Mm.
So went probably to a Walgreens, bought a Missouri Meerschaum and probably a pouch of Captain Black,
Yeah.
something or other. That would have been in my head because my father was a pipe smoker and
I
his
see.
father was a pipe smoker and his grandfather apparently was a pipe smoker as
Nice.
well. So, which I guess would have been common during
Yeah.
that time. During that time, early part of the career, I was a copywriter at ad agencies, uh,
Okay.
some in Costa Rica, some in Dallas. Um, Ultimately, I ended up working for Home Depot, which is a
Oh,
very large home improvement retailer
yeah.
here in the U.S. In their marketing department. It's a great company. All they did was promote me and pay me well.
Nice.
And after about 5 years, I literally could not get out of my car in the morning.
Oh,
Not their fault. I just was not particularly passionate about what I was doing. Right.
yeah.
So,
I hear you.
the height of the recession, quit, took a
Yeah.
year off, back in 2010. And in 2011, I was like, well, it's a recession. I've quit. We've just had a baby. Maybe I
Uh-huh.
should go get money
Yeah.
and go back to work. At the time, I was still so burnt out on corporate that I was only applying to jobs in either nonprofit or university communication. But one of the very first things I saw on the job boards was brand manager pipe tobacco.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe I could do that. Turns out that the brand I had been smoking at that time, I was pretty much buying a pound of 1Q a month.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really experimenting very much at all, but it turns out all that was made about 15 miles from me here. I'm just
Yeah.
inside the city of Atlanta, um, and end up getting hired in that role back in 2011. So at that point, I was managing all of the pipe tobacco brands. Again, I was just your typical, what I think of as your typical pipe smoker. It's a
Mm-hmm.
solitary hobby that I'm doing on walks or if I'm driving or what have you. I'd never heard of a pipe club, never heard of a pipe forum. Would have never occurred to me to shop online for tobacco. So I'm learning about the business and the brands, and then starting to learn about, the actual community out there. So a lot of what I did probably from 2011 through to 2021 was from a portfolio standpoint, bringing back a lot of the old lane blends that have been discontinued, right? So Reynolds used to own us, RJR Reynolds at that time. They had whittled down like the lane bulk portfolio to 6 SKUs, and just discontinued a lot. So I started digging into what we should bring back. So most of the lane portfolio from the bulk side, things like Edgeworth Ready Rubbed, Crown Achievement, just anything I could find, and along the way coming up with ideas of my own and launching some other products of my own as I began to learn more about leaf and blending and what have you. So at that point, I did not have most hated man in the pipe tobacco industry on my bingo card. People kind of liked me. I was bringing back some of the things that they missed. So yeah, literally for a decade. And then we, I guess around 2020, the decision was to close the factory here in Tucker, Georgia, and ship that production to Athens. So I was there for that announcement and that process. Again, during that time, started going to all the pipe shows, attending a few pipe clubs, being a little bit active in the forums. We started our own kind of mini pipe community called This Pipe Life, forums and videos and other stuff like that. So yeah, really trying to reinvigorate some life into this pipe tobacco thing. But for in 2021, they've done a lot of restructuring, but they shifted my role because the company wanted to see if we could make something happen in the hemp cigarette space, of all things.
I see. So that's why you will be in charge in the future? Or?
You see the branding in the very, very background there. For about 3 years, I was out developing the products. Basically, they told me form a little company and try to make this thing work. So I did everything from securing the raw materials, coming up with the blends, hiring 7 salespeople, all the marketing. It was like you started your own company.
Yeah.
So really for the past 4 years, that's why I've been almost completely absent in the pipe tobacco community. It was completely focused on that, on the road, 3 months, 3 weeks a month.
Yeah, that's a pretty big growing market. So.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But
okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. This is not hemp channel, so.
Yeah. So anyway, we shut that down at the the beginning of last year, and then there were some more reorgs in here. So I was basically told what my current role would be the last week of June, which is my current role within STG is primarily overseeing the fine cut portfolio globally.
Okay.
And the week after they told me that was my job, they said, we bought this company. And we need you to analyze the Sutliff MacBaren portfolio globally, or fine cut and pipe tobacco, and the STG portfolio, fine cut and pipe tobacco globally, to come up with a recommendation of what should that portfolio look like going forward, right? So that's thousands of SKUs between the two companies, in about 80 different countries, and probably, I don't know, something close to 200 brands, maybe a little less, but pretty close to about 200 brands. And they asked me to analyze that and come up with an initial recommendation. I had about 6 weeks.
Wow.
For the initial recommendation.
Yeah, that's not a lot of time.
So that's a long-winded way of, I'm a pipe smoker who stumbled into working for a tobacco company and then realizing pretty quickly that I'm not capable of working outside of tobacco anymore.
Okay. Yeah, well, at least now you found something that make you leave your car every morning or leave your bed, whatever.
Yes.
And you said you've been in charge of this, analyzing the portfolio for the brands globally, so not only the United States.
Globally, it's very important. Well, most of the conversations, understandably, have been revolving around Sutliff, but this is a global conversation and analysis. Yeah. And a lot of the brand, at least I was very familiar with the U.S. pipe tobacco portfolio.
Of course.
Right? Although I didn't realize just how many SKUs were within that portfolio. But there's aspects of the global portfolio that, you're just having to absorb. Country dynamics, brand dynamics, blend dynamics in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah. And since you mentioned SKUs, and before we move forward in why you then wanted to ask you why you wanted to go on a forum and become go to the dark side, become the Darth Vader of pipe tobacco. I wanted to ask you about this SKU, this blend, the Garibaldi, which is tobacco that probably very few people that will view this interview know. The reason why I'm asking you about this is because this is a tobacco that is only available in Switzerland, as far as I know. It's named Garibaldi, and there is also the face of Garibaldi, which is a Italian national hero. He is the guy that famously unified the country in 1861. But again, this tobacco is not available in Italy, and it's made by STG in Denmark. So I wanted to ask you if you know anything about this tobacco, meaning what's his story, what is inside of it. It's a mystery to me. I tried to look for anything, Googling STG website. I couldn't find any information, and it's a pipe tobacco. So I wanted to ask you if by any chance you can solve the mystery.
I have a list on another screen of over 4,000 individual SKUs from both MacBaren, Sutliff portfolio, and our portfolio. That brand does not appear on it. So I have never heard of it. It's possible. I mean, the package says it's made by STG. So it's likely or possible that we are digging that as contract manufacturing for someone else. And that's why it doesn't have a brand perhaps on my list, but I know people.
Okay.
I can find out what the heck this thing is, but I've never heard of it.
Because I know that this tobacco has its fans, for sure in Italy. I have a few friends that really go to Switzerland and buy it. It's super cheap, but again, it's nice. It's rustic. It's similar to Five Brothers. But to me, the most interesting thing is where this come from. So any information you're able to, if you're able to find it, if you have the time to find it, again, feel free to email me, because that would be solving a mystery to me. So thank you. Anyway, moving forward with our chat. So again, as I just anticipated, I wanted to ask you at that point why you have decided to put yourself out there, put yourself on the spot, to start addressing questions of pipe smoker on forums, on Pipes Magazine forum, and take the hit on yourself, essentially. And I mean, for what I understood, and confirm me if I'm wrong, this is something you decided on your own to do. It's not something that the company asked you to do to become the official press office regarding this matter. So it was your own initiative. And again, there were 3 threads on Pipes Magazine with question to you that derailed due to furious pipe smokers. So again, again, it's kudos to you for having the willingness to do it and spend your time trying to give more information to us. But I just wanted to ask you why you wanted to do that.
Well, there's actually two parts to this. So one, why am I talking to you?
Okay.
And starting there, I mean, there have been two other folks who have reached out, and we just haven't been able to schedule to go on.
Okay.
But I saw your, your chat with Per, who, haven't seen him in many years, but have very, very fond memories of spending time with him at the Chicago show or at the Circle Bar at the Venetian in Vegas.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
But just a great guy. I enjoyed your conversation and the way you guys both approached it. Broadly speaking, so we couldn't say anything while this stuff was going on, and literally the portfolio was finalized like the first week of December, right? To when you get to these decisions, it wasn't going to do anybody any good to add more speculation to anything.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, literally our CEO was getting pinged with a series of emails,
Oh, really? Directly?
Questions. Well, a lot of times if they found his name, they would go to the generic inbox and go to him or go to others. And then I was seeing some content out there that was not really accurate and not really helpful. So that was part of it. It was time to join in this conversation. As far as talking with my company about it, I basically said a generic email response is not going to be the thing to do here. This is going to require extended conversations. So I'm going to go do this. And they said, have at it. Right. So it's kind of permission. I already had jumped in with the thread before I told them I was doing it, but they'll just have to trust me that I won't say anything too stupid. But there's another aspect to it. My self-conception for a decade was I'm the guy helping bring back and make sure there's life in this pipe tobacco industry. I knew what this exercise was going to look like in broad terms when I got this thing. Specifically as it probably related to Sutliff, and to a lesser extent, I would know that, but like with Svenborg and what's going to happen with the factories and what's going to happen, with blends and portfolio, I get it, but with the people, right? So, I had to sit there while we tell folks at the Lane factory that had been there 35 years. And I knew as soon as I started analyzing this, certainly for Sutliff, what this outcome was going to look like, right? I'm not making, this is a big company. I don't make any decisions. I couldn't even, in a vacuum. But it is my proposal, not necessarily to what to do with the portfolio, but I know what the outcome is if that's the decision. And when it relates to the factories, I don't make decisions on factories, but I knew what would happen. And 99% of that recommendation was taken in, right? So what I didn't want, I think I owed an explanation to people. I think certainly when I was seeing, and it wasn't much of it, but comments that were negative towards Sutliff or Jeremy, I couldn't stand by that. And ultimately, with Max Stokeby going to be taking over this portfolio going forward, he came into the process later, but he was getting married while I did this initial recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, you should know who drove that recommendation and who didn't and why it happened. So, again, I have been out of the community for about 4 years, but I spent a lot of time in that community. So I felt like, just hear it from me.
Okay, and you expected things to go south, let's
Oh,
say.
I didn't expect the first thread I opened to be shut within 2 hours. Um, people are, I get it. I mean, there's nothing fun
Mhm.
about any of this. It's shitty,
It is.
right? So absolutely expected it and don't expect anybody to feel any different, but here's some, for whatever it's worth, some as many facts as we can provide and as much as we can get into the logic of why this decision that I still believe, and this sounds terrible, or contradictory, that the decisions that I propose, we won't say that I made them, are in the best interest, not just of my company, but the long-term viability of this category. I genuinely believe that, and we can get into why I believe that. But it's shitty. Standing there in Richmond a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. I don't know if it was a real surprise to the folks, but it was certainly the timing of it was a surprise because it was a surprise to me. That's not cool. It's not cool for them at all, and it's yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I read the news of STG acquiring MacBaren, I actually we're talking back in beginning of July. I expected that something like this would happen, but I didn't expect that it would happen so fast. So I was expecting things that will be more progressive, more gradual. That's what I was expecting.
I,
Um,
I feel the same way, and I think for everything outside of the U.S., it looks more like I would have thought, which
mhm,
is we'll do this analysis, we'll come up with a portfolio in December, and then we'll start the plan. And then over, as they've announced, sometime probably 2026, production would stop. That seemed like so the speed of the Sutliff that came as a surprise to me as well. Even with Lane, different situation. We told everybody at the factory, it's more like with the Svenborg folks, it was a year in advance of guys, this is, and gals, this is what's going to happen. This is what it means. So there was even more time for folks to digest this. That happened faster than I predicted as well.
This might also, I don't know, it's a question or not, but this also might be due to the fact that maybe in Europe, there are more, I mean, job protection laws are tougher than the United States. In the United States, it's easy to do this kind of processes.
I mean, I'm sure that would have played some part of it, but no. I mean,
Mm,
if you're having to transfer some equipment, you're having to replicate blends. This stuff takes a long time,
absolutely.
right? So just even doing that and maintaining the business, yeah, it takes a long time and a lot of resources just to be able to convert
Hmm.
some of those blends. So maybe some of the labor restrictions over there, but I don't think that was probably. I mean, I don't know, but I don't think that was the. I think the driving factor was more, how do we maintain this business and maintain the continuity of the products over time, and what equipment do we need to bring over there? I mean, it's an army of people analyzing this stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that um, like in anything, like there are two reality here that we are facing, right? So on one hand, we have the purely business perspective that has nothing to do with people or consumer experience. That is just purely numbers. And that applies not just in this case, that's something that applies in any merge and any acquisition day to day. And then, of course, we have the other side, which is our side, the pipe enthusiast or pipe consumers that, of course, will see necessarily some blends that they liked or it was their favorite that will disappear. So if on one hand, of course, I mean, I could totally understand the logic. I mean, I had a business school education, so I know how these things go. That's why I expected things to be to go this way, because of course when you acquire a company you look for synergies to have to increase your profit or to reduce
My favorite word.
yeah, I mean, of course, that's the key word when you acquire a company. That's where you create value.
Yeah.
And so it was crystal clear. But of course, as a pipe enthusiast and passionate about many MacBaren and Sutliff product, I was, of course, let's say, sad, if not devastated, of the fact that something will be lost. But you mentioned that it was in the best interest of the viability of the category, right? So we're talking about pipe tobacco. And I think this is a topic that is very interesting because we consumers don't really have a clear idea about how big this industry is, what is its direction. At least I've been smoking pipe for the past for 20 years. This year would be my 20th years of pipe smoking. But I always have every day this sort of little anxiety by myself that anything might finish in any moment due to regulations, restrictions to smoking, higher taxes, and so on. So, like, it's like having that knowledge that you say, okay, this is a word that is disappearing. I am like, it's towards extinction. No, I'm just telling you about the image that you have, not the
Sure.
reality. So that's what I wanted to ask you. That's where I'm going. So, but we don't really have at the end of the day the real idea. So if pipe smokers are, because if you talk to, I last year talked with somebody smoking pipes, and he told me that he actually had the impression that actually pipe smokers are increasing, that in some ways is coming back. Of course, this is happening to wine and spirits as well. People are like focusing more on the experience, or consuming less in terms of volumes, but looking for a better experience. So I think this might apply to cigars and pipe tobacco as well. So tell us a little bit more about the viability of the business, so that is having some real world information about the other side. So what is it actually you're seeing in this term, and why this led to the decisions that you made, the proposals you made?
Yeah, there's a million rabbit holes we can go down here, and I'll go down them all. But so broadly speaking, and you got to take COVID out of it, because
Of course,
COVID was great for tobacco, any
that
kind of
was
tobacco.
great for many businesses that now are
Pipe tobacco, if we just talk volume wise, for 60 years has been declining globally, right? And we can track this very, very accurately in the US, and we can have directionally pretty good ideas of the rest of the world. I'm saying as an industry, probably declines volume wise 10 to 12% a year, right? Now, company A could see growth while company B is declining. The online channel can see massive growth while brick and mortar declines. Drugstores in the US stop selling. So there's still people gaining, but overall, this is a declining industry, just like cigarettes are a declining industry, right? That doesn't mean it's not wildly profitable. It is.
wildly.
These are great margin business,
Okay.
yes, overall, in general, compared to other consumer goods. You're able to do very well in that environment as a business, but it is a declining business. Another aspect of this, though, is it's our belief, and we've looked at this, there's CDC data out there in the US, Center for Disease Control, on pipe smokers. You've got to kind of dig through it. By our estimate in the United States, there's probably 1 million, 1.2 million pipe smokers.
Right? Okay, well, that's a lot.
I don't know what the numbers are for the rest of the world, but as near as I could tell, broadly speaking, directionally speaking here, almost half of all pipe tobacco is smoked in between US, France, and Germany.
Oh, read France?
France, from a volume standpoint, comes in quite high, actually above Germany.
Interesting.
Now, having said that, I'm basing that on ours. There could be others that are doing stuff here and there, but these three countries are driving a great deal. Of course, pipe smoking is more prevalent in Denmark, but by all accounts, certainly in the U.S. and from my European counterparts, the number of pipe smokers is probably growing. So our consumer base is probably increasing. But today's consumer is never going to smoke like the bearded old man.
Yeah.
Who could sit at his desk and smoke all day, every day. I'm out of a home office now, so for better or worse, this thing never goes out. Today's consumers don't behave that way, right? So even as we add, I think you'll get to a point where the number of newer smokers starts to equalize with the older smokers, and now you finally find this kind of base, and maybe it can start growing again. But along the way, what's been happening? I mean, we're talking millions of pounds of pipe tobacco going back in the 60s. I mean, huge industry. Companies have been going away left and right. McClellan, Mike just decided nobody can do what he does, and he's out. Yeah. He's had enough. Daughters and Ryan, he might have sold off some of it, but he's still doing the Perique side, but not necessarily his own branded side. Even along the way, Lane changed hands, from privately owned to the Rothmans to, and then this company gets bought and that company gets bought. Sutliff owns, gets sold off to Altatis, who decide they don't want it anymore because it's a rounding error to their business.
Yeah.
And sells it to MacBaren. So you have these, it's either dying off or consolidation along the way, so that there's of true manufacturers that can take a raw leaf and turn it into a finished product. There's just not that many of us left out there, right? And the reason I say that what I'm doing is for the long-term health is you do need somebody who's capable of creating large amounts of pipe tobacco. Yes, it's shrinking, but when the manufacturing base shrinks, if you don't have somebody who is really capable of producing large amounts, it's questionable whether anybody left could even supply the market. What happens then? We lose more brands. And yes, it's not everybody's favorite little brand, but it's the most popular brands on the planet by any metric. You lose the volume, right? So now you're whittling down to people who make wonderful tobaccos, but even fewer of them, and nowhere near capable for many years of actually supplying the demand that's out there. So yes, we need companies like STG to maintain their interest in this. And what that means for a publicly traded company is to maintain their financial interest in it, right? I have one little nitpick with what Per said, but broadly speaking, yes, this is a business. It's got to be profitable. And we need STG to care and to continue caring. Because then you really have an apocalypse. And then you really lose a lot. So that's why I say I know the pain, but yeah, we're kind of coming into this bifurcated world, and the world needs both. You've got folks that are really good at producing very large quantities of very popular tobaccos for a planet.
Yeah.
And there's going to be people who make really, really good smaller batch blends to serve the needs of individual consumers. And there'll be crossover between both. But, and it's kind of where you were going with Per, I think on the more optimistic side, that starts to create opportunities over there. But if I don't make sure that I'm advising on the right business decisions here, we have a much worse situation on our hand as a community. That doesn't make it any easier for somebody who's lost blend 988, and certainly doesn't make it any easier for the employees. But I believe for the long-term health of the industry and the category as a whole, the really shitty decisions I've had to make are the right ones.
Yeah, because there is actually another aspect to it now that you were mentioning it. I was thinking about, and it's the fact that if we consider raw leaf producer like farmers and so on, of course they do it for whoever can buy it the most, right? So if we imagine, when you were saying the disappearance of a very big player, that will mean also that farmers will need to find a different job. So that means that eventually tobacco will not be even harvested, they will be even farmed, and they will.
I'm less concerned about that simply because we are, and I think Per mentioned this as well. We are a rounding error. You know, there are some specialties, like there's only a couple of people doing real Latakia, Perique, but luckily most of that probably goes to cigarette brands. So that helps keep that going. The other ones, you know, a lot of the dark-fired Kentucky is used in chewing tobacco and snus, right? The Blue Cure, the Burleys, the Orientals. So from a farming standpoint, I think that is less concerning to me.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's good. Absolutely. I was talking more about specialties because, of course, pipe tobacco compared to cigarette is a drop in the ocean, let's say, in terms of volume. But still,
well, I mean, there aren't many people processing black Cavendish, right? Because it's really messy. But so even that process, you've only got a few people that are really doing that at scale.
Yeah, and each manufacturer actually makes it a little different as well. So
you have to make it differently for our own stuff. You know, the lane black Cavendish that's used in a lot of those is completely different from a process standpoint than what we do, say, in the Peter Stokely blends, or even Borkum Riff.
One question that also was asked you, and it relates now to what you were just saying, is the fact that, of course, if we talk about strictly Sutliff, not MacBaren, because MacBaren was essentially very similar in terms of volumes and scale, I guess, of production to STG. But if we strictly talk about Sutliff, you mentioned that they produce like 1,000 or a little over 1,000 SKUs, and they were all small batches, essentially, almost all. Let's say 95% of them were small batches. And of course, that's a different production model than STG. And the argument here would be, wouldn't have been, and of course you had to restructure the portfolio of SKUs, that would have gone without saying. But even after a restructuring that would have been necessarily smaller than the one that has been done, couldn't have made sense to keep Sutliff as a small batch producer for STG in the United States, especially considering that we don't know what's going to happen for duties and import over the next few years. So like saying, okay, we keep a specialty brand producer in our own portfolio that of course has to be profitable, that will be profitable. And so we have like two different lanes. We have STGs, mass market, mass producer, big volumes, and then we have specialties, smaller batch, more flexibility of production, and so on.
Certainly, I mean, that the Sutliff portfolio was profitable as a standalone business. Some of it comes down to how profitable, and how profitable are you when you've got to pay for an additional factory, right? So, it was discussed, and not a small amount. But no, I do come back to some of the business side of this, that this made more sense and made this, more profitable for the company.
Yeah.
But one of the ways I think I've tried to explain it, and maybe this is an example. So we had the factory here in Atlanta, and separately, I was on a separate trip in a cigar factory in the Dominican, and I see this log of tobacco sitting in the corner, and I'm like, "What the hell is that?" And it's called Andullo.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost kind of like Dominican version of Perique. They take the tobacco, wrap it in palm leaves, bury it under pressure or whatever for 6 months or a year, and out comes this thick, molassesy, anisey kind of tasting, just brick hard log of tobacco. And I was like, well, give me some of that. Mm-hmm. They had used it it was mostly used for condiment, like a little bit, 1% in the cigar. Let me play with that. So I bring that back, and I end up launching, I think it comes out backwards here, Andullo. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Lane Andullo at the time. Okay. When I sold a tin of this, I made really good margin. It was very profitable on a tin by tin basis. But apparently, I'm one of the few people on the planet who thinks this tastes good. Okay. I love it. Mm-hmm. I love the nicotine kick. Most people didn't. So it was profitable in and of itself, but that thing was so hard, that Andullo tobacco, it was breaking the blades in the cutter. So they would have to come in and replace these blades on this cutter. And then when I set up this operation at Lane, I was doing the same thing. Let me have a little boutique operation in the back. The tobacco was put in here by hand. It was sealed in plastic by hand, mm-hmm. and sealed in a chamber that would only do about 10 or 15 cans at once. So I've got that perfectly profitable product. It's not as profitable as, say, Lane 1Q. Right. So meanwhile, I have a factory with only so many hours in a day. And instead of running what everybody wants, which is Lane 1Q, mm-hmm. I've got guys taking down the entire machine to make your tobacco. People who should be on the line packaging something else back in a corner room, stuffing this thing that I love. Meanwhile, not making the things and potentially running out of stock of the things that other people do love. So that's just an example of some of these balances. And no, that is what we're good at. That's what makes the most financial sense, is to, in any manufacturing operation, you want to do longer runs on fewer items, right? And as a consequence of that, in a lot of cases, that is a driving factor. Not enough volume, not enough money. It just doesn't make sense. And keeping open this thing for things that only a certain part of the market want, you can do it. You won't lose money, but you won't be doing anywhere near as well in the otherwise. But there are other things that go into this.
You also. Yeah, it's also true that you introduce different products to also see what can, because if you only keep doing whatever the market wants, you don't know, you don't do anything new, there is no evolution, and eventually you don't even explore things that can be successful. So it's also part of the business to explore things that can be.
It is, and I think we're like the cigar business or craft brewing or wine, where folks may have their go-to blend, but they love to experiment. But we can come back on the consumer side, mm-hmm. of that.
Yeah.
That's true. Then the question becomes, for the health of the industry, forget my company, what's the right number of blends? So remember, that was 988 SKUs, but in a 1 ounce, a 16 ounce, a 5 pound bag size, it's probably 300 blends, individual blends, call it. Mm-hmm. I don't actually know the full number. All right. Well, Lane has 125. Cornell and Deal probably has a lot more than that.
Yeah.
right? And we have, the other manufacturers out. Where's the line for interest, right? And, if there wasn't a Cornell deal, would I feel differently about this? In that, yeah, the world is only going to get Budweiser from now on. Now, our portfolio is extremely diverse, and we have tobaccos that cover almost every need, and most people prefer our tobaccos. But we also have these other folks, and we still have people in the industry for business reasons or other reasons that are out there still continuing to innovate. If we talk about the United States, innovation's a tricky little thing because we have this thing called the FDA. And in theory, if that product was, you have to prove it was sold in 2007 and that it hasn't changed, or that what you're selling now is identical, substantially equivalent to that. So just to pause.
Let me ask you something on this, because I think this will clear, because I have a question on this. Because, for instance, I saw that even MacBaren, like, for instance, the Rustica, the HH Rustica, I noticed that, it's commonly available in Europe, in Germany, but for the United States, it was only imported as small batches. And
Yep.
I thought this had to do with the FDA limit.
If you got it on the market, I'm trying to remember, you were in the market prior to 2018, right? So, all right.
No. My question was also because also
it's pertinent. So you have two types of products that the FDA allows. You can have a grandfathered product.
Mhm.
That means you were selling it in February of 2007, and you haven't really made any changes to it in that time, right? As long as you can prove that, here's the ingredients I was using, here's the ingredients I'm using now, here's a receipt from you're golden. Then you have what's called the substantially equivalent, which basically means, hey, I've got blend A over here, blend B, from a scientific standpoint, is basically the same thing. If you had a product on the market in 18, even if only you launched it in the beginning of 18, the FDA said you can submit a report and you can continue to sell that until we tell you can't, until we've analyzed your submission and come back to you. So the Rustica, when did that come on the market? Maybe 16. I feel like I smoked. Anyway, it was after 2007 and before 2018.
Yeah. Okay.
So the FDA would not have prevented that at all. It's just a very delicious and really unique tobacco that only a few people like.
No. But I use MacBaren as an example because we were talking STG MacBaren. But for instance, even these small batches from Cornell deal, right? I mean, one is coming out today. How can they? I thought that there was like a threshold of quantities that you could,
It's not quantity based. So I'm gonna try to word this appropriately. You've got these regulations that are thousands of pages long and don't really tell you anything. Right? They don't tell you what they mean by a substantially equivalent. They'll know it when they see it, right? In that circumstance, I can get two lawyers to give me an answer on what would qualify, and they'll give me different answers. I could probably go to the FDA and ask two different scientists, and they'll give me a different answer. And naturally, that means different companies are going to interpret the definition of substantially equivalent differently. What it is safe to say at STG is that we are very, very conservative when it comes to these things. So the threshold that we might use and feel comfortable with may not be the threshold somebody else does. It doesn't mean they're wrong or doing anything wrong. It's just I have Danish law, so they'd be a little different. But as it relates to the Sutliff portfolio, there were items that, under our conservative view, wouldn't fit our metric. And so no matter how much we felt, and that's just an internal decision on how we happen to interpret the rules very, very, very conservatively, that we said for certain items, we can't keep that.
So you didn't want to keep it because you could not grandfather it or substantial equivalent. That's what you're saying.
Our interpretation.
In your interpretation, of course.
Our interpretation for certain items is that we felt it was riskier than we were willing to be. We're just, for all the right reasons. Not that anybody has the wrong reasons.
No. I don't want. I didn't want.
Interpret it differently, but we are, just very, very conservative in trying to find rules as we interpret them, and probably, yeah. So we're just very conservative when it comes to that. So that impacts some of the portfolio decisions as well. Yeah, and that's about all I can say about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was not asking you to comment on current and deal. I was just asking because I still see. No worries. I was still seeing brands coming out with new products, and most of the time is limited release. So, and since I also tried to get an understanding of the FDA rules, and I couldn't really fully understand how it works. So since I saw this limited release, in my mind, I was thinking maybe there is like a limit you can still release as a special edition that is allowed under the FDA. So that was my question. But you say no.
I can explain that down to the nth detail, but it would not be doing justice to my fellow folks in the industry. So I won't. Mm-hmm. I will say this about the FDA or about some of these regulations. So I'm the chairman of the Pipe Tobacco Council here in the United States. That is a lobbying group, along with the Cigar Association, that goes to places like the FDA and Congress to advocate on behalf of the industry. Mm-hmm. Jeremy is a part of it. MacBaren, a part of it. Some other folks in the U.S., Cornell and Deal, is a part of it. We all go together. So as an example of kind of some of the things we've done, and this is where the whole most hated man in pipe tobacco industry sometimes turns me for a loop. I accept the moniker, but so in probably about 2018, maybe it was a little after that. So the FDA already has a set of regulations that they haven't put into enforcement yet that would ban flavoring in cigars and pipe tobacco. If you ban flavoring in pipe tobacco, you're basically left with five brothers. Depending on how you define that, right? If you define sugar, we're all in trouble, right? So in whatever time period it was, 2016 to 2018, myself, somebody from DC, it wasn't Sykes, I think it was Tracy, Jeremy McKenna, Mike Gold from a big distributor here in the US called Rango, along with lawyers, regulatory people from STG. We went to FDA headquarters, brought them every form of bizarre pipe tobacco in the world, sat down with them, presented them with their own CDC statistics about who's actually smoking pipe tobacco, because this is about preventing childhood, and there are no children smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
And when they put out those rules another year or so later to ban flavors, they said, we are not concerned about pipe tobacco at this time, which is as great an answer as you can ever hear from the FDA, because of the work that the industry does. And then, yes, I was doing a lot of talking, and I was the chairman. I'm sitting across from the FDA, convincing them not to destroy the entire industry.
Yeah.
I guess that's a little self-serving, but maybe I'm feeling a little defensive. But you can't apply logic to the FDA.
I know.
The only logic is really they want you out of business. Then everything makes sense. At least that's the way it's been in the past. But hey, I mean, they're no longer regulating cigars, but they will regulate flavored cigars, not premium cigars. But we are still regulated by them. So yeah, it's a thing. I
Yeah,
digress.
that's the main. No, you didn't digress, because I think that's central to any discussion about pipe tobacco in the United States, and not only because I mean Europe follows just after it, so or even worse. So I think that is central actually to what we were talking about, the viability of the business and where this industry is, what is the direction, where it's headed, because the regulations are, it's not just a, sometimes, you see people making, their own argument by comparing pipe tobacco to, or tobacco in general, to other industries. But of course, you forget how regulated this industry is, and that's really what makes a huge difference when you think about the logic and the forces driving this kind of industry.
Well,
And
talking about a little more about consumers. Now, this data is, I think, almost. When did we do this? Yeah, this is a decade old, but I don't think much has changed. But back in the day, we were doing studies on Captain Black pipe smokers,
Mhm.
and comparing them to folks who don't smoke Captain Black. So we basically, from our website, we had a database of just people who love Captain Black. And then from our online forum, we had another group, right? And that would be, the kind of pipe smokers who engage in a forum.
Yeah.
And so we looked at that from, brand awareness. We looked at it from age groups. Do you like to smoke other things? So we looked at that. Does my video disappear when I look on the PowerPoint? No.
No, I mean, you have to share it. No.
I can't do that.
Yeah, no.
So in general, 50% of pipe smokers are over the age of 55, right? But for what we call new enthusiasts, is the term we use, which would be the
Mhm.
folks who came in from the forum, only 34% were 55 and above. And then Captain Black smokers were just really old. The new enthusiasts.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I want to say this for the audience that will watch this chat. If I'm not wrong, Captain Black is the most sold, most popular tobacco there is.
I think that's fair to say. Actually, the MacBaren Scottish Mixture is right up there. But
Okay.
Captain Black, broadly speaking, globally, it's that aromatic tobacco of choice. It's probably sold in more countries than anywhere.
Yeah. When I was living in China, I could only find one pipe tobacco. At the time, it was over 10 years ago, and it was Captain Black.
Right. In this case, we're really just using that as a proxy. I don't know what was another. There was one other data point. Da, da, da. Okay. I like to experiment and try a lot of new flavors and or brands, right? For a Captain Black smoker, that number is 13%.
Wow.
Like, that's what they smoke.
Yeah.
They behave kind of like I did before I got in the industry. I would buy Lane 1Q and then maybe get an English blend on the side. For the new enthusiast, that number is 62%. So it does come back to this kind of variety question as well. Okay, how much variety do we need? A lot, as much as we can. I've swung it is ironic. I mean, while I was at Lane, I'm launching stuff. I'm expanding this portfolio. I have to cut it a lot when we go, and now I'm the guy doing the opposite.
But I think this is actually a big thing, a big point of discussion, because since is a pipe community, and when I talk pipe community, I talk about people that go on forums, that watch this video because they go on YouTube looking for pipe related content, or on social media, and so on. We don't really see that portion of Captain Black smokers, or most of them, because they don't do that, right? Because they are more like cigarette smoker. They always smoke the same brand, right? You always same the same brand of cigarettes, and that is more for because you smoke rather than for the experience of smoking, for the flavors, for the pipe itself, and so on. And so I think there is this duality of what we perceive as a pipe enthusiast community uh, compared to what is out there in reality. And I think you also were mentioning something on the forum in which like you said that 2 to 3% of the pipe smokers in according to your estimate is actually pipe enthusiasts. That was your estimate.
So we don't have real data on
Of
this.
course,
The way I'm kind of getting to that is I feel pretty good about this 1 to 1.2 million pipe smokers
in the
right?
United States.
In the United States. Pipes Magazine has 30,000 users on there. If 100% of them were for the US and 100% of them were actually active on this thing, I hadn't been active on it for 4 years. I didn't have to change my password when I went back on. So if 100% of them, you're getting to this,
Yeah.
2 to 4%. I think it's safe to say that most of the volume is being driven still by this core general pipe smoker who's a bearded old man, maybe a little less digitally engaged. And there is a nature to this thing that it's about a moment of solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't occur to us to go sit in a room and smoke pipes with people and talk about it. It's just something we love and enjoy. So what is that number? Based on the volumes of things like 1Q and Captain Black and, even the larger ones from any of these manufacturers, it's going to be the vast, vast majority is just more it's still a hobby to them. So different behavior than cigarette smoking, but from a brand predilection standpoint and a blend, clearly much less experimentation going on. You like what you like, you know what you like, and that's all you're doing. But that's not really the future of the business.
Are you able, I was checking Lane 1Q, which is also another aromatic. Are you able to give like a proportion about between Lane 1Q and Lane Crown Achievement? I think those are the two most successful popular blends from Lane. In terms of volume, like
Crown
1 to 10, 1 to 100.
Yeah, let me see what I can do
Just
here.
ballpark, just to have an idea, or even something from STG. I don't know, like Captain Black versus the Peterson 965 early morning, just to have an idea.
Let's get rid of that. Really? Hold on. I've got a very big spreadsheet here that I'm sorting. It's got to be fantastic viewing. Yeah. If you were, I think I can give you this example. So I got to get down to the item level. Hold on.
No, because for instance, even years ago, when I also talked with Per on another interview I did with him 3-4 years ago, and so he was saying like 90% of what we sell is aromatic, and then it's like a little bit of English mixture, and then even less Virginias and so on.
I think that's fair. One way to look at it is Lane 1Q. From a volume sales point, sells almost as much as the entire Sutliff bulk portfolio combined. Yeah, so it's not an aromatic in that sense. It's also just the popularity of that particular one.
No. I know. Also, Per on another interview years ago said, and he confirmed me on our recent chat that like the Scottish mixer for MacBaren was like 50% of MacBaren revenues, which by itself says a lot. But I was wondering more about like Lane 1Q, like every 100 pouches of 100 tins of Lane Q, there is like 1 tin of an English mixture. So just to have this kind of proportion between the styles of tobacco, because I think that again, many of us enthusiasts don't really understand how
Well,
niche.
okay. So, for instance, one thing is to talk about blend type, another one is to talk about packaging type, right?
Mhm.
So, bulk versus you know, a
Yeah,
tin,
I mean,
completely
I don't.
different.
It's just to have a ballpark indication, just for understanding, and we don't have to get super specific.
Sure. Um, so, for instance, uh, versus early morning pipe,
Hmm.
probably more preferred, probably not as heavy in English, but there's some latitude in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's
and it's in a tin. Um, 1Q sells 22 times, 23 times the amount in a volume standpoint is that product.
wow. Yeah.
Uh, no, there is no doubt. I haven't gone through and lately and categorized this by aromatic versus English versus
No,
flake,
no,
but
no. But again,
yeah, that 90% number directionally is there. In our case, I don't know. I'd have to think about the English versus the like a Virginia, like an Orlick versus Stokeby, and I could
mm,
crunch the numbers. But it's safe to say that yes, the majority of this, and when I read the forums,
yeah,
most people are gravitating away from the aromatics.
yeah,
So it just speaks to a little bit of the uber passionate uh, members of this community versus folks like before I became just
yeah.
completely embedded in tobacco inside and out. Um, I was a pretty boring pipe smoker, very utilitarian to this day, very utilitarian on the pipe side.
Yeah. No, no. Again, it's the silent majority. That's what it is, which actually, it's what you were mentioning, make the industry viable, make the bulk of the volumes. And again, this is I'm in the wine business, and that's exactly what is happening in wine. The volumes are declining, but the volumes are declining because people are drinking less. So volumes are declining for mass market wines.
Mm.
They are not declining for premium wines. Because why? Because people are drinking less. And so since it's not now that because even when I was a kid in Italy, wine was like there almost every day at every meal. Now you don't have it at every meal. So when you have it, it has to be something special. So you prefer to, and probably that seemed to be the direction. Now, of course, wine and pipe tobacco is not the same thing, but I see some similarity in
Well,
this.
and what happens in the next recession?
Exactly. Let's see what happens in next recession. So, um, one another thing that I wanted to ask you, and again, thank you because this was, I think we touched so many different points in explaining, giving some perspective about the decision that you made and the rationale behind and the logic that drove the decision. Which again, ultimately, on from the STG perspective, it's all about profits, which makes sense. But one thing, no, no, no. Sorry, I
I
went,
no,
no,
no, no,
no, no, no, no,
no,
no.
no. It's not
No,
necessarily wrong. Ultimately, it's got to be about
no,
profit.
no, I phrased it wrong. I didn't want to say that.
Okay, I'm defensive.
No, no, no,
Darth
no.
Vader is
And
defensive.
no, no, no. That came out wrong, and I want to rephrase it. That was not just STGs. Any company acquiring another company, you do it for a reason, which is profit. And also, in general, even if we want to say other companies, I name them all: Germans, Coop, Cornell Deal, any company out there that make any product, you do it for profit because you're not a non-profit
Yeah,
organization. That's what
I
company. So it's normal. So I phrase it very
don't know. It's not even that you're necessarily 100% wrong, right? I mean, if we are a publicly traded company, it's about driving value. That's what we have to do. Um, I don't want to confuse it, and I think I know what Pear was saying. Um, but I still have to take exception with it. And he was basically referring there just being no tobacco men left at Scandinavian, and whatever words he used, and I think I know what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
And I kind of define this in a couple of different ways. There are leaf guys, right? I mean, real leaf guys that could look across a room at a leaf sample and tell you what country that thing is from.
Okay.
Right? The guys who go around buying this leaf and can judge a bale at an auction on site. But there's very, very few of these guys. Then there are blenders, right? And that learning to be a leaf guy is 20, 30 years to really understand, not just visually price, the chemistry of the leaf, the sugars and nicotines, leaf positions, and all that stuff. It's just a mountain of knowledge. Then you've got the blenders who probably have really good leaf knowledge, but could never go to an auction and buy leaf, right? Not to that in-depth way, but have both exquisite palates and the ability and a curiosity and a desire to create, right? And then you have what I think of more broadly as tobacco men and women, which is where I would put myself in, which is, I go back to this Home Depot example. There are people on this planet who would be perfectly content going to a job every day where they feel appreciated and they're passionate about doing a good job, even if it's selling hammers.
Yeah.
And there are people who are ruined for work outside of tobacco because nothing else has any interest to them whatsoever. I know enough to be dangerous about leaf. I've trained my palate reasonably well. But at my heart and soul, I am a tobacco guy. Like there's nothing else I can do. I can't even imagine it, right? Now, Pear is probably one of those rare guys that's all three, right?
Yeah, I think it was more referring to people like Harry Kalberg, that he was like a leaf guy as much as he was the CEO and the owner of the company.
Yeah, I think that's where he was referring as well. But I still, and it's probably, and this may be a little, one of our leaf guys who is responsible not just for teaching me whatever little I know, but for maintaining the quality of this stuff, not just from making sure we got the right leaf, but the casings and everything else. That's probably why I'm said, because he passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but make no mistake, and yes, we could argue about what level within the organization and what level of, passion, commitment, is it about numbers, is it about tobacco? The folks that are making this stuff and that are on the ground day to day are tobacco men and women, right? So
I see that
of this company that is, whether it's on the cigar side, or the pipe or the fine cut side, that are really responsible for making sure we get these products to you. This isn't just a job. It's generally not. So I took a little exception there, and I don't know why I went down that. Anyway.
No, it's fair. Of course, you wanted to sort of defend all the workers in the industry, which is totally understandable.
And myself.
And of course,
I don't want to be coming off as defending myself. It's always going to come off that way. But it's a complete contradiction that this isn't a hobby for me. This is what I do. Like, this is who I am, right? And it's been that way for quite a long time. And I'm the guy killing your favorite place. Two things can be true.
On this point, that's also what I wanted to ask you, because you also mentioned also on the forum that you said, I don't want to quote it verbatim, but you said something like something that is disappearing now doesn't mean that it cannot be reintroduced at some point in the future. So, and you also said that you would like listen and see what is the feedback from the consumers. So on this point, I wanted to ask you two things. Uh, first of all is, so why killing something on the first place if there is a chance to reintroduce them? Because I mean, the same logic would apply even, I don't know, a few years from now. And the second thing would be, how can the community send your feedback, share the feedback to STG or to such a big company so that things can eventually change later on?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is a little harder to answer on, well, why bring it back if you were going to discontinue it? One short answer is I'm probably wrong about a lot of the decisions I've made or recommended, right? Just because I'm seeing blend A, these numbers seem small. Well, now that there's fewer blends on the market, maybe that thing would have been bigger than ever if we'd have kept it, right? Yeah, probably one of the easier ones to talk about in that sense is, because there's been a lot of questions about these, is the blending components, just straight a Red Virginia, Latakia, Perique. So the reality is the volumes are not that high on that. The number of actual tobacconist blenders are it's probably more limited than we would think. There are ones out there, John David Watts, that are doing fantastic work, and they are able to do that under FDA. Just doing great work and extremely passionate, and I don't know what the number of those folks are. Overall, that volume doesn't lead too much into the fact that prior to the Lane factory closing, I launched a Lane version of Perique, Latakia, Virginia, and all of that. The quality was just fine. I had to throw half of it away. The demand wasn't there. And it comes back to also this manufacturing, which is, so we'll get around to the rest of this point. But so if we take the Lane factory, which is the one I've walked, daily for a decade, if we start this processing, we have dry leaf and we need to condition or moisturize this leaf. We had a chamber there to do that. It was about 40 feet long, right? So you'd be taking an entire or a portion of a giant box of tobacco leaf. You might get chopped once or twice, but then it's running through basically a steamer. Then it gets cased. Then it's got to go into our cutter. Well, for that cutter line to really get moving, you've got to create kind of what they call a cheese, kind of a really thick bit of tobacco crunched up in there for the cutter to really do its thing in the right way on our machines. Yeah. Well, that needed about 1,000 pounds just to get the right pressure, unless you're going to take somebody else off the line and start manually putting some object near a very sharp, fast-moving blade, right? If you were to look at that same conditioning chamber at Sutliff, it's going to be much, much smaller. I can't visualize their cutters, but they're going to be able to run probably on less volume. Also, just different techniques. So we might make a huge silo full of thousands of pounds of a black Cavendish that's getting used across multiple blends. But for the most part, if I was making a blend, I'm putting all of this leaf in there for my Oriental, my Burley, my Flue Cure, and then I might funnel in some of the black Cavendish on the side. A lot of the ways Sutliff did it was different. They might take a leaf grade such as a Burley, run it. Same casing sauce. You run that through. Now you want to make your other blend. All you got to do is get a pound out of here and a pound out of here. Yeah. Versus what we're doing, it's an individual casing sauce for this blend, right? So the approach was a little different. That's why if I ran 1,000 pounds of raw Perique, I'm going to throw half of it away. It's just going to be sitting there. Now, what might change? Well, Sutliff isn't doing it anymore. Cornell and Deal, I'm sure, will do it. Do they have enough? Now the demand might look differently, right? So certainly if I were to predict something that would come back sooner or later, it's probably some of these blending components. That won't come the impact, back to your other point, of necessarily a consumer doing it, because you can't really gauge that. I can barely gauge it when my salespersons tell me. No one told me you did it before, but the retailers can. I mean, we've got, the same folks who sell our cigars are also selling pipe tobacco door to door in tobacconists every day. So one source certainly will be, and no, we have not thought of a formal way for consumers to provide feedback yet. But we're going to be getting it constantly from the folks who knew what really sold on their shelves. Right. So I think that a lot of that feedback will come from the retail universe itself that we have day-to-day contact with. Because when we're talking about the tobacconists here, right, we're not talking about drugstores, maybe online. A lot of this stuff is sold online, but I think it's the retailers who are going to give you probably your best gauge of what the real demand was, because they know how long that tin of this or that jar of that really sat on their shelf. And I haven't gotten any feedback from our guys yet. We're about 2 weeks into this. So I'll have a better feel for, what the retail world's reaction to this is in a month or so. But no, we do need to find, it could be in the form of polls, it could be in the form of what have you, to gauge interest. We've got, now a lot of them are mass market smokers, but we have 20,000 consumers, maybe more, in our database from our websites. We have, in theory, the entire pipes and cigars database, which is going to be far, far bigger. There is nothing stopping us, and this is probably what it would be. I'm thinking out loud. You create a survey monkey and just start taking polls of people. What do you want to bring back? And you can get to a huge cross section of folks, without spending a lot of money on research. Very quick answer, because most people would want to give their opinion.
Yeah.
So it would probably look something like that, and then something, also with the retailers as well. And part of this, okay, company, I've made the hard decisions. I've made this thing as profitable as possible. If what I've said is right and it worked, you need to trust me that I'll make a good business decision going forward. We've had to pull back. It was just way out of control. And I'm talking globally, STG. I mean, just, you launch an item, somebody keeps making it, the demand is barely there. If nobody's being real strict about rationalization every year, I'm sure you have to do this on some of your stuff in wine, then all of a sudden you've just got this sea of products that none of your salespeople want to go away, because there's that one store, that one consumer. Take the hard decision, take a step back, and now let's almost kind of reset and start moving together, assuming I'm good from an FDA standpoint.
Of course, that is always the main concern there. Yes, and on this topic, you also mentioned that in case some component was really disappearing from the market, the STG was available to, again, get back to the decision and eventually start making it again. Do you still confirm? Because this is a big if, let's say.
Can I confirm that some type of that activity will happen? Yeah. I mean, the plans, we've just finished chopping everything down. So we can talk about longer term planning and how we do it at STG. It will absolutely be part of the plan. We definitely have to take this step back in order to move forward, but between demand from consumers and retailers and proving to my organization that we can make good business decisions, so trust me to make another one to bring some more interest back to this hobby. Absolutely.
So you expect this to happen? I mean, some blends might very possibly come back.
Absolutely. To what extent? They're not going to be 988 of them, I'll tell you that. And the when, not until after we've fully integrated the MacBaren, the Svenborg production. And even I know it's only 4 SKUs from Sutliff, but I mean, I was on a call to recreate those SKUs. I was on a call with 15 people from our organization and the Sutliff organization, tracking down, okay, who are you buying this from? Who are you buying that from? What kind of testing do we need to do before, afterwards to make sure we're doing it the same? When can we get to it? What do we got to do on leaf grades and all of this stuff just to create a blend, recreate a blend, to do it in the most authentic form possible. So it's not small amount of work when you do that sort of transfer. But yes, it will happen. It will definitely happen.
Okay. So let's wait for it. The next thing I wanted to ask you is that last week, I don't remember, probably 10 days ago, a list was published for the US market of the blends that will stay.
Yep.
And first, I wanted to ask you if something similar will also be released for Europe, and when eventually, if you have this kind of information.
I don't. I don't know how the sales teams are planning on doing that, or if they're having, in this case, that letter that went out, and what most people have seen is an authentic letter issued from Sutliff to its direct buying customers, right? So it didn't come from STG. It went to everybody Jeremy was selling to go, hey, here's what's going on. Is there a similar one? There'll have to be at some point. The other thing to keep in mind, again, everything's happening very quickly in the US. It's not going to happen as quickly for the rest of the planet, right? I don't even know what the timings are, just because I have proposed timings to delist, but a lot of that timing isn't until 2026. So a lot of the things that are going to go away doesn't mean it's not like Sutliff where, oh my God, we're shutting down production next month. For the other ones, it'll be longer. I can answer a specific question, but it's 80 countries.
Wait. For instance, you said also that it doesn't mean that what you said, not necessarily what will disappear from the US will also disappear in other markets. That's what you said. But my counter argument would be, but if the US is the biggest and most profitable market, for instance, we talk about amphoras, right? So if they're not imported in the US, why would they stay in Italy? I'm in Italy right now, so that's the question. Or the HH series, just to name a couple of series.
A lot of that. Let me stop looking at this spreadsheet. Could be a couple of reasons. Just because we're the biggest market doesn't mean it sells great there, right? And by great, for a small boutique brand, it still could be a very, very small amount. FDA can be another consideration for products as well. For HH, I think I might have responded to you, not knowing who you were, or somebody about HH.
I think somebody asked you for HH in the UK.
UK, that had already been discontinued.
Yeah, that was already discontinued. That was different.
The good news is, because stuff like that would really, stuff that's named after founders getting discontinued is not cool. The good news is, whatever I told somebody else asked me about Europe, and I think I gave the wrong answer. So what's on the list today for maintaining in Italy is 8H vintage Latakia.
Okay.
And in Germany, Latakia Flake and Old Dark Fired.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Those are pretty good tobaccos. So it's official
Yeah.
because something was published, I think, yesterday by the website Cigar Awards, and they published also a list, which I don't know. They didn't say which was the source. They say that was their assumption, and that also included the Old Dark Fire as remaining together with other amphora. Most
So
of them.
somebody else has to look. Be careful with all these lists. Even I gave wrong information because I was looking at a slightly older version of a list that had different information. But I'll have to find that. But yeah, I think when we looked into it, HH had already been discontinued there. And what was driving that? We were distributing for MacBaren in the UK. So we were, there's all these weird little bedfellows in the industry.
So the Old Dark Fire will stay, and no, because I mean, my assumption was like, I mean, yes, even if they sell a little in the United States, but since you're making it, you just ship it.
So there's an extent to that is true, right? I'm already making the tobacco, so why not just throw it in there? And this does get into any manufacturing process. I need to buy different packaging. I need to maintain different labels and health warnings on all these packaging. And even though I produce that tobacco, I now have to not only buy really small, larger quantities that I'm ever going to need of this packaging. I'm going to have to store them. And then I'm going to have to shut down that line while I send somebody back to go pick it up and bring it up. Right? It's just the realities of manufacturing world. That could be a part of it. Again, FDA could be a part of it, or it just wasn't overall that popular here. That's a lot of what's happened around the rest of the world. There's not a lot of blends that are disappearing. There are blends disappearing from markets, and there's almost no brands disappearing based on the way we've done this analysis. So,
since you mentioned it earlier, what about the French brands, the Caporal? Because the white Caporal arrives in Italy. It was also it has a lot of fans. It was made by MacBaren. And then, of course, in France, they had more of them. They had the Saint-Claude. They had they had the blue version.
Yeah, hold on one second. Let me just look at France. If I have this broken out correctly.
With the Scaferlati Caporal.
All right, let me just look for Caporal because that sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure that's, yeah. Make sure I'm on the right screen here. I'm seeing, I don't know if this is for a market. I'm seeing an export, a blue, and a vert. Is that white?
Maybe. I don't know. Well, repeat. Say it again.
It's Caporal VERT.
Oh no, the vert is green. That was the nicotine-free tobacco. I didn't know they were still making it.
Nicotine-free tobacco?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought they stopped making it when MacBaren took it over. But yes, that's what they were making.
Showing it there, and then there's another one that doesn't have a descriptor in front of it, so maybe that's just your standard. If
probably
that's
the white one that also was arriving to Italy.
Yeah.
So they are staying, you're saying?
That's right.
Good. And what about the Saint-Claude, ST Claude? It's not there?
That sounds familiar. Hold on.
If you're making those three, Saint-Claude should be the same with a little bit of Virginia in it, so it should be pretty much the same.
I don't know why I'm not seeing. Let me make sure. That I don't have a filter on here. Oh, maybe that's what it is. Hold on. the dreaded delist filter.
Mm.
Because I did not see. Hold on. I don't see St. Claude on any of this. I see St. Bruno, St. Barry, another St. Bruno.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm looking. So I don't know.
Maybe that one is gone.
Well, but I'm not seeing it on. I'm not seeing the brand name at all.
Oh, that's
either
odd.
on.
Okay.
It is odd.
I can show you a pouch if you want, but
there's a possibility that. Oh wait, I saw it. I see it. Hold on. St. Claude. All right. I see a 40 gram in France, Aaron, and it says keep.
Okay.
There you go. Is it just one SKU? That's all I'm seeing.
Yeah, they only made one.
Okay.
Good. And so the last one I will ask you, let me think. I mean, it will be the Amphora series. Because is going to be completely disappearing from the United States. That blog posting from Germany was actually saying that they were disappearing 4 of them. So the Kentucky, the Burley, and the 5 and 6. But the Virginia, for instance, was staying. The original was staying as well.
Let me look. My list.
Oh, actually, I have something here because I went to my tobacco shop actually, and I bought a few of them to stock. And this is the Caporal we were talking about.
Let me sort by market name. Germany, I'm seeing Full Aroma and Virginia Blend. Italy.
Not the original?
I'm seeing Original Blend in the Netherlands. I'm seeing Original Blend in Italy. I'm seeing Full Aroma, Special Reserve, Original, and Rich Aroma.
Okay. The Virginia is not in Italy?
I see it in Poland. I see it in Germany. I do not see it in Italy. Make sure I got my filters right. No, you'll have to go to Germany. Or the Virginia or Poland.
Damn. A lot of people were smoking it in Italy, so that's a pity. Okay, so what we can see from this little chat that we had here now about this, what will stay is that it will, it's what you were saying, it will disappear by market. So it's not just what will still be produced, it will also a lot about what will be distributed.
That's right. Like, what was selling well in a particular market, right? So pretty much all the Amphora blends still exist. It's just if it didn't sell great in Japan, then we're not going to do it in Japan, for instance. And again, the timings on that, I don't currently have visibility into, and I don't know that anybody does at this stage, what would be, so let's say we were going to discontinue the Virginia in Italy.
So sorry, you said the old. Okay, no, go ahead. When you don't know.
The when I don't. They've tried to give us guidance from the sales teams, but I don't know if I believe it. So
you said the HH old dark fired will stay only in Germany or also in Italy?
Italy, I only saw the Latakia.
The vintage Latakia. Okay.
Let me find this. Italy. Okay, I see the Virginia blend.
Oh, really?
And so, according to this list, that whatever plan we have will change. It is scheduled to be delisted December 31st of 2025. So in theory, the sales teams have said, yep, we get it. But either for whatever reasons, distributor contracts or what have you, it could be a million reasons. There could be trade windows. I'm not as familiar with Italy. But they have said, we want you to continue to make that for the remainder of the year. And that's for a lot of the Europe and everything. That's a lot of what you see on that list. Now, whether that means it'll still get made all that time or you'll never be able to get it exact, that we want our last distribution date to be, on such and such a date. But for the most part, what I'm seeing is a lot of the Europe stuff, it's not going to happen overnight.
Okay.
For multiple reasons. Again, does a piece of equipment need to use? What order are they doing and doing the work to make sure we're duplicating these things correct, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of complexity there. So, okay. So let's wait for some more official information from STG on this on Europe. Another two things that actually it's the same topic I wanted to ask you about is the relationship with the pipe community. You know that Sutliff was very much involved. It was sponsoring events, the Chicago Pipe Show, of course, also the podcast. It was supporting like content creator and was sponsoring websites. So I wanted to know if you're aware of any plans in which STG plan to engage with the consumers in a more direct ways. And related to this, there is also the questions about what will happen to tobacco reviews.
So we will remain engaged. I'm not even sure what we were doing since I left the pipe tobacco side of this. When I was there, we were at all the shows. I know we were sponsoring on some level. I know at some point we were doing stuff with John David on his podcast. The broad answer is we're still making plans, but I know for a fact we will be at Chicago and we will still be a major. We will sponsor as much as STG and MacBaren did combined.
Okay.
For instance, right? They don't know this yet, but I'm planning on going to St. Louis on some level. And then the rest, no, we're still kind of plotting that out. I mean, again, the real driver for pipe tobacco on the brands and a lot of what we're talking about going forward will be in the hands of Max Stokeby. Well, he just moved back to Denmark. So when it comes to physically being present at these things, that would still probably, fall to me. And
so you will
reviews, they are in the process of, you've got to take it off of this server and move it over to this server. So they're in the process of doing that work. But yes, they are in the process of doing that to maintain that site.
Okay, so this also works as a warning to users in case they don't see it accessible because they are changing servers. Don't panic.
When that happens, having done this before, you may, and it'll take a minute to even do that. Typically, we'll have to make sure we're very active on the forums because you'll probably receive an email or automatically when you log on, hey, you got to reset your password. Okay. Is usually what would happen. I mercifully, hopefully, will not be too involved in that project. I don't know if you've ever done a project like that, even when you're not doing the technical work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of annoying questions on the technical side that they expect you to answer. So
no, but that's why I was giving a notice in case you see it down for some reason. Maybe that's what they're doing. They're updating the servers in the next, I don't know, months, years, whenever it will happen. So
no, it shouldn't
don't panic down right away.
Yeah, no, and it shouldn't go down as a result of any of that until whenever they do this kind of switch over. But the URL would be the same. It would be the login that you would have that's where a lot of times we'll make everybody reset a password.
Okay, so but we can clearly say that STG has the interest in keeping it alive and on, not shutting it down.
Correct.
Okay. And regarding Max Stockeby that you mentioned, what would be his role moving forward? Just to better understand, eventually also address him questions in the future if anything comes up, or so we
Yeah,
also.
and I don't know if everybody knows who Max is. So his father's Peter Stokkeby. I think the brand itself is pretty much U.S. focused, but some of the finest fine cut in the world and a whole line of bulk tobaccos and some other stuff. Peter's son is Eric Stokkeby, who's still active here in the U.S. Pipes and pipe tobacco, working for another company called Arango. He's also on the pipe tobacco committee. And Eric's son is Max, who joined. So he's the fifth generation in his family to be in the tobacco business. He joined right out of college as a salesman for Lane, call it 12 or 13. And then I hired him, brought him over on the marketing side for quite a while. So he will be overseeing the entire portfolio. What does that mean? It means going forward, things like, well, how are we going to be engaged in the community? What's the budget we're going to need to be able to do some of these activities in the U.S.? What are the blends that should come back? What's a blend that is still not doing very well, and we need to managing that portfolio as it goes along. Other traditional, mostly in the U.S., marketing style activities that you're allowed to do, and longer term planning. To be looking at what things look like in 2026, 2027, 2028. That process at our company is long. So basically what would happen, and it's what I'll be doing for Fine Cut, is you've got this entire portfolio of items and brands. You're doing various kinds of analysis, looking at, not only performance, what do I have in the right price bucket? Is it a global brand? Is it really just one that does really well in France or Italy? So we would call that like a local hero. Yeah. Or is it everything else, just this kind of tail stuff? What do we have today? What do we want tomorrow? That process would look like doing that analytical work and coming up with an initial recommendation. And that's a months-long process. Then you're going to go around basically to each of the sales teams that are over each of these countries, right? Just because I say, hey, on paper, I want this to happen in Italy.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Italy. I don't know the market dynamics. I don't know the competitive set. So I've got to get with the Italian sales team to understand what the true dynamics are of that brand, that blend within that marketplace. And this is some of the work that went on in the background for currently where we are, that was very quick. So you'd get their feedback. Then you'd go to our boss. We have different bosses, but at that level. And then you'd go to their boss. And then you'd go to the head of commercial. You've probably been through this exercise. Yeah. So it would, to really say, this is the plan, 6 months to a year to go, this is a 3-year, 5-year vision for this. And then as soon as you try to implement it, it changes.
Of course.
For whatever reason. Market dynamic, oh, you didn't think that was selling well when you did the plan, but now it's taken off. Or this sales guy's saying this, or you get a new marketing director or CEO who has a completely different vision than what you had before. So
on that regarding the famous 2028 deadline, so what you're saying is that nothing is really set in stone.
Yeah, what I'll say broadly is that it's a pretty extensive and formal planning process. Once we get into our normal day-to-day systems, it goes through multiple iterations. And even after we set it in stone, it's really a sandcastle. No, that's not true, but it will change along the way. And that process has barely begun, like barely begun. I have not put any of my vision for fine cut, and I'll say the same for Max and Pipe, in front of anybody but a couple of people on the sales level so we could take it through. We haven't even gotten up through the rest of that. And even what we've put on paper, we know it's wrong. We know it's wrong. Even from initial conversations, like, okay, that looked good for you sitting in your shed in Atlanta. What do you know about Japan? Not much. So it's so early. It's all going to change, and it'll be a much longer process than one might think. Maybe too long.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you another couple of things, and then I'll let you go, because we've been talking a lot, and it's been a pleasure. I think we uncovered so many things. One thing is that one of the fears that many consumers have is that following this big consolidation that happens, since MacBaren and STG were the biggest two players in the pipe tobacco market, some are afraid that this will also impact on prices. Do you think that that is a reasonable thing to fear? Do you see, or your opinion, simple in the future that there will?
So, in tobacco, price increases are a reality.
Of course.
This is how you survive in a market that's declining 10% and make sure that this is still a good, viable business for everybody. What those will look like, what they would have looked like otherwise, I haven't even done a full comparison of where their prices were to ours. I don't have a great answer to that. I know we've made mistakes as a company by trying to get aggressive for completely different reasons on price increases. And some of that's been recently, both in the US and Europe, where we've said, you did not help yourself. So I would say there's at least a consciousness of the elasticity of that, of price. That's right. And, we're not the only folks out there trying to sell pipe tobacco. So that's about as good as I can get you.
No, for sure. And again, that's the answer that we can all anticipate, I will say. So after our conversation, so is it safe to, how can I phrase it? Because you mentioned, now let's put together the dots for which I am inferring into. So you mentioned that essentially you made your decision based on, of course, profitability, but viability of the business more than anything, and this will also apply to distribution decision later on. So is it safe to say, or is it right to say that STG wants to focus on mass market, let's call it like this, kind of blends, and less on niche, and therefore was sort to say, because Per said that this is an approach that do not lead to new products, so to innovation in our business. And again, we're talking about a shrinking market, a niche of the consumer that are looking for this innovation. So we can put together these two things to assume that STG moving forward might focus on.
Yeah, I mean, we could define what's niche, what's mass market. There is absolutely no doubt that we are much better as an organization and as a publicly traded company selling more of the products more people want, right? And doing larger production runs. That naturally, and based on this Sutliff, you can see the outcome. That rules out again, what is small batch, but some of what we would consider some of these smaller volume boutique stuff. I mean, I think when I look at the portfolio from a blend standpoint globally, again, we can argue about what's left in the US versus what's here. There's a lot of blends in there. So what does innovation look like going forward? I know they still do, some limited edition stuff out of Europe. I'm not as familiar with their activity on that side. I think it is safe to say that the innovation in the US will look a lot more like my first couple of years at Lane, where I wasn't trying to launch anything quote unquote new. I was trying to reverse the decision of my predecessors. In this case, this would be Max reversing my decisions. I think it'll more look like the resurrection of a beloved blend versus, frankly, in the US, we in particular are much more restricted on true innovation. Yeah. That can't really be done. Again, what my hope and objective is that we've had to do these really shitty things. We've had to kind of pull back on the complexity of the portfolio to get this in a really, really good financial position. And when we've successfully done that, when I go to my boss and his boss's boss and say, this is what we need. You trusted me there. You need to trust me here. And that will lead to that. Again, I think it's safe to say for the next year, everybody's just going to be trying to make sure we've integrated what we have. Mm-hmm. It's after that we say, okay, we've successfully done that. Now where can we take this thing with this much larger portfolio? And that's when you'll see, again, true innovation on the US side really can't be done. There's things you could do. But broadly speaking, I think you'll be more likely to see that in the European markets. Germany, Denmark.
Yeah, mostly Germany, I guess, because it's more easy. Let's say it's not. I mean, for instance, if we talk about Italy as an example, to bring a new product to Italy, it's such a long process. So that's why you cannot really. So it's expensive for a company. It's expensive for the importer. Then the profit, the margins are razor thin because everything is regulated. But Germany works differently. So there is more space.
That gets back into even some of the international decisions and having to make sure the markets are weighing in. Yeah. Just because I'm saying, hey, do this, well, you realize if you do that, you can't reverse that decision very easily.
Yeah.
So getting their input and the local folks on the ground. I mean, the benefit of STG scale is certainly for Western Europe. We usually have bodies physically on the ground that really know, what's going on within the markets. Internationally, I say internationally, for what we would call rest of the world, Asia, South America, you usually have one person in that region or a couple who would be more in tune.
Regarding Asia, since you mentioned, because you provide some great insight, at least to me, because I'm always very curious about the market size. And you also in the forum, you mentioned that United States is the biggest market for pipe tobacco, both in terms of volume and profitability. Then you said that right after is Germany and France, you said. But
from a volume standpoint, they're actually quite close.
Really, between Germany and United States?
No,
I mean, it's just for the sake of, because but where I was getting is that my impression was like that China was actually having a huge demand. So many smokers, pipe makers sell everything to China. So I had even the impression that China might have overtook United States in terms of volume. Maybe even there was an interview years ago from Gewitz, and they were saying that 50% of their production was going to China. So I was like, no. Again, we're not.
That could be. So I would say. So I'm going to assume that we're still the market leader in those countries, right? So, and when I look at that as compared to the rest of the world, you're not seeing its volume, and it's certainly growing. But it would pale in comparison still. to what you're seeing in Europe and in the US.
Okay, that's
It's
interesting. Good.
often for companies completely new business, so it's all incremental and
Yeah.
it's increasing, so it's great business, but it still hasn't crept up to that scale. There's a lot of volume actually, and it's hard for the Middle East.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And Russia was very, very large volumes.
Of course.
We stopped selling there, well,
Yeah.
about 2 years ago.
3. Now it's almost 3 actually. So unfortunately.
But yeah, actually, North Africa, Middle East actually does a good bit.
Oh, North Africa as well?
Mhm.
Okay, good. You see, that's again, it's the difference between real world and the impression that you might get by just reading things around or the social media and so on. So interesting. I think we touched pretty much everything. The only thing that we didn't touch, and I don't even know if there is anything to say there, it was regarding the Sutliff machinery thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, from a business perspective, I understand, but I don't know.
Well, nobody understands anything because there's no answer to this question yet. I mean, we can all make suppositions. So, what happened when we shut down Lane? At that time, we tried to sell that equipment. We had very few takers. The cutters people wanted, but I made them ship those to Oregon for my hemp production.
Okay.
Though that was probably the thing that was most in demand. Some of it, we were making filtered cigars there. That moved to the Dominican. We had one piece of equipment that we took over to Athens. The rest of it was scrapped because nobody wanted it. Might that change completely in this scenario? Possibly. What I would say is, all right, let's say there's a piece of equipment there at Sutliff, and another pipe manufacturer says, ooh, perfect. Okay. You have the choice of spending probably a couple $100,000 to disassemble this thing that is very old.
Yeah.
Move it down to wherever you plan on taking it. Pray you can find somebody who can put it back together again. Oh, by the way, there hasn't been a part or a training manual for this thing in 40 years. So find somebody who can figure out how this thing actually works if they don't want to move from Richmond. And hope that this thing, and you better have a machine shop to make your own parts, or you could spend double the cost and go get yourself something that is modern, works, somebody can train you on, and they still make parts for. So I think we have to inject a little bit of reality into what we're talking about here.
Yeah. No, and I think this gives some perspective again onto this.
Or to importantly, I'm in all these damn conversations. So whenever that was one of the things I'm like, where are you getting this? I'm sure the conversation is being had, and you may not even be wrong about what but I have never been, we haven't gotten there yet. So there's one, it's literally a museum piece in the lobby of Sutliff that Jeremy and I talked about. Was like, we better make sure that gets to somewhere.
Yeah.
And whether there's like a tractor museum there in Richmond that also has some old tobacco machinery. If we don't want it, then get it somewhere.
Yeah.
Where you don't lose that kind of history, but things actually people can use. We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think we talked about so many things. We touched many things. So at the end, I think the impression I got from this discussion at this point is that the reality that we will see moving forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is my opinion, so it's not yours, I'm not putting words in your mouth, is that essentially we will see a big mass producer of very popular blends. That would be STG. And then we will see several, not many, a few, depending how we define a few. Let's say smaller, we can call them boutique producer that might be focused on niche blends. Do you think that's a reasonable description?
Yeah, again, using very broad
Yeah,
terms,
of
even
course.
what we might consider. I think that's fair.
Mm.
I think that's accurate. I mean, you just start to nitpick with like, oh, well, I'm making 125 blends. Some of them I still consider quite niche,
Yeah,
but no, I'm not making 1,000 blends, which are definitely
niche.
what we would think of small batch. No, it is absolutely the focus to, you know, we to make more products that more people want. And then there's going to be other folks who are still making products that more people want, but have they're either set up that way or have a different operating model where they will be focused more on the small batch. And I think for those of us that are still making tobacco, and it is just a few,
Yeah,
that's not a bad outcome. There's pain for consumers who are, and that it sucks, and it sucks to be the guy who's inflicting that pain when I was trying to do
yeah,
the opposite for quite a while. But again, I come back to it, and it's even when we were shutting down Lane, and I of course didn't know all the folks at Sutliff and far fewer at MacBaren. I mean, there's real people who've been in this business a long time that have to go do something else. That's the real impact here.
yeah,
The industry will be fine. We are going to have whether it's from STG or others, we're going to have the variety we want. And in the short term, there's somebody like Simon at MacBaren who's been doing that for more than half his life. I had the opportunity to sit with him for a couple hours in November. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
No, of course, the workers both at Sutliff at MacBaren that will be affected will suffer probably more than us that we are here just discussing about blends.
They'll be fine. These are skilled people, but yeah, for right now, I'm obviously aware of the pain, and I keep saying but we have inflicted on the passion for the hobby, and I weigh that with the pain I've inflicted on real people and how I ended up in this position.
Yeah.
Be that guy.
I know, I hear you. Yeah, but you said that you will spend the next few years possibly on reintroducing some blends, maybe. So we'll see.
I genuinely believe that. I genuinely 100% believe that, both from a passion and a business standpoint. It'll be the right thing to do.
Okay. So my vote goes for which I think it has zero chance to come back, but my favorite Sutliff was the 515 RC1. I love the correct, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my vote. I cast here to you, but I assume there will be not many of those. So.
No, on the forums, that's one, mostly from the blenders angle, but I've seen the requests on that, and that type of thing is actually easier to bring back from the technical side of it, right? There's just not as much going on in a base blend like that as there would be bringing back, a very complex flake or something.
Absolutely, I understand. Yeah, I mean the last thing, but again, I think we touched on that. It's just that also Per was saying that this could impact the supply of tobacco of the smaller manufacturers. Do you think on that?
So that one gets really tricky, right? Certainly there is a very long history in this industry of all of us selling products to each other and back and forth, right? A lot of the private, smaller blends that Pipes and Cigars sell, Sutliff was manufacturing. We were selling products directly to Sutliff.
Yeah.
That they were packaging. So this is absolutely right in the industry. I don't even know all of the answers of who sells to what. And if I did, it's a different decision-making process for a different part of the organization under a different business model. And when you have these relationships, you also have something called an NDA.
Okay.
So you would never be able to discuss all the back work, and it would be a disservice to these are partners of yours.
Yeah.
So I really, I'd probably give the wrong answer, and then I'd get fired.
Yeah. No. I'm not saying to comment on specific. It was just if saying that it could be a possibility or not. That's it.
It's genuinely a different set part of the organization. We have a contract manufacturing team.
So you're saying that there is somebody else eventually doing the same job as you did, just looking at those?
Yeah, there is a couple of people that are exclusively focused on making products for other folks. So, for Max and I, we're really about brands and our brand. With the rest of that, that it's just a completely set of different decision making.
Okay, no, that's fair, and I don't want you to get to be fired or say anything that you don't want to say. It was just, again, for the sake of the argument, because me as a only pipe enthusiast, of course I don't know all those different mechanism and logics going on. So that's perfectly fine. Is an answer that's perfectly fine.
That's all I got.
It's fine. It's totally fine. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just can thank you a lot. Thank you very much for reaching out. Thank you very much for being here to have this wonderful chat. I think we really explored a different perspective and a different point of view on this matter. But also, besides this matter, I think we discussed many of the things on how the industry works. So,
well, and from my point, it's one thing to go in on a forum, but to be able to have just a conversation, it conveys the message, and it's still shitty, but probably in a more realistic. It's a preferred way to try to communicate.
Well, I mean, the thing is that the second discussion, the one that lasted the longer, the second thread was like 17 pages, and the forum is not that easy because you have so many messages.
Yeah, you
cannot reply them all. So it's not as easy to have a meaningful discussion. And then if you read like a very, very long, you write a very, very long post, then it's also not everybody will actually go through everything, or they will pick some things, a few things, and answer to something. So it can be messy. But I really hope that we had a nice conversation. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and I hope that also the people that will view this chat will have found some of the answers, at least, that we're looking for. So I really tried to put together all the questions that were posted on the forums that people were asking, people that also outside of the forum that are discussing on social media, on Facebook groups, and so on. So I really hope we covered many topics on these topics. So yeah, I really just want to say a big thank you, Leonard, not only for being here, actually, to put yourself out there, to try to be to explain, to be the face for this, and spend your time and energy to soften a little bit the as you say, the worst, the ugly things. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. No, I won't say my pleasure because it's weird to say that about this topic, but I was happy to come on and really grateful for the conversation as well.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll be in touch. I really want to know about the Garibaldi. I don't know. Yeah, it's here. So remember that I want to know about this. that I maybe won't go away, but Probably it won't go away because nobody know it exists. Maybe I don't know,
I'll find out.
except the guy making it. Probably nobody knows.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Leonard.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If you stayed here without ever skipping, I really hope you found the conversation useful. I think we uncovered a lot of information, but mostly I think we also provided some information, some indication about what the future will look like, at least from an STG perspective. Let me know, please, in the comment what you think about it. If you send me an email, feel free to reach out. Let me know what you think, because I'm very curious to also understand what other fellow pipe smokers think. That's pretty much it. Keep your pipe lit and talk with you soon. Bye.